Welcome back to 40 Days of Lent with the Screwtape Letters. In yesterday's episode, we saw how Screwtape introduced the concept of spiritual dryness, what he calls the Trough, and how God himself sometimes permits it as a way of deepening and purifying our love. Today, in Chapter 9, Screwtape moves from explaining the Trough to exploiting it. He's done with theory. Now he wants results. And his strategy comes down to three things. Get the patient into sexual immorality, make him forget that highs and lows are simply part of life, and convince him that his conversion was just a phase. As always, let's begin with a prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world for the ruin of souls. Amen. Now, Chapter 9. I hope my last letter has convinced you that the trough of dullness or dryness through which your patient is going at present will not, of itself, give you his soul, but needs to be properly exploited. What forms the exploitation should take, I will now consider. Right, so Screwtape rolls up his sleeves. The dryness alone won't do the job. It has to be weaponized. And the first weapon he reaches for is sensual temptation. Now, here is where it gets interesting. You might expect the devil to attack when the patient is at his best, energetic, cheerful, feeling on top of the world. But Screwtape says the opposite. In the first place, I have always found that the trough periods of the human undulation provide excellent opportunity for all sensual temptations, particularly those of sex. This may surprise you, because of course there is more physical energy and therefore more potential appetite at the peak periods, but you must remember that the powers of resistance are then also at their highest. The attack has a much better chance of success when the man's whole inner world is drab and cold and empty. Drab, cold, empty. That's the target. Not the person at a party surrounded by friends, laughing and alive. The target is the person alone at midnight, staring at a screen, feeling nothing in particular. Because that person will reach for anything that promises to fill the silence. And here's where Screwtape reveals something that, frankly, should give us pause. He's almost grudging about it. Never forget that when we are dealing with any pleasure in its healthy and normal and satisfying form, we are, in a sense, on the enemy's ground. I know we have won many a soul through pleasure. All the same, it is his invention, not ours. The devil cannot create a single genuine pleasure, not one. Everything genuinely delightful in human life, food, friendship, beauty, music, romantic love, every last bit of it originates with God. What Screwtape can do is take those real pleasures and distort them, push them out of their proper time, their proper context, their proper degree. And the formula he offers is one of the most chilling lines in the entire book. An ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure. That is addiction in 4 words. That is every compulsion that starts as relief and ends as slavery. But notice the flip side of what Screwtape is admitting. Genuine pleasure, taken in its healthy form, actually works against him. Because genuine joy, real delight, real enjoyment leads back to the one who invented it. It is, in a sense, a foretaste of heaven. Now, there's a remarkable experiment that illustrates exactly this point. In the 1970s, a researcher named Bruce Alexander noticed something strange about all the studies claiming to show how addictive certain drugs were. In every one of those studies, the rats were alone, isolated, in bare, empty cages with nothing to do but press a lever for a drug. So he built something different, what he called Rat Park. A spacious, stimulating environment with other rats, tunnels, toys, things to explore. He gave them the same access to the same drugs, and the result was remarkable. The isolated rats chose the drug compulsively to the point of death. The rats in community, surrounded by others, engaged with life, largely ignored it. The same substance, completely different outcome, because loneliness is the devil's laboratory, and community is the antidote. This is why Screwtape is so insistent on a very specific tactic that might otherwise seem minor. You have only got to keep him out of the way of experienced Christians. Of course, because experienced Christians know that dryness passes. They've been through the wall before and come out the other side. Their presence alone is a kind of proof, living testimony that the absence of feeling is not the absence of God. Keep the patient away from them, and he faces the trough in isolation, like a rat in a bare cage, reaching for whatever promises to fill the emptiness. And this is where the Church's tradition offers us something beautiful. St. Francis de Sales used to say that joy prepares the heart for grace, that happiness is not a distraction from holiness, but a preamble to it. Think about the Beatitudes. Each one begins not with "Holy are you" or "Righteous are you," but with "Happy are you." In the original Greek, makarios, blessed, flourishing, deeply joyful. Jesus opens his greatest moral teaching not with obligation, but with joy. Because joy opens us, it loosens the grip of the self and makes us receptive to something greater. Arthur Brooks, in his research on human happiness, identifies 3 ingredients that make up a genuinely flourishing life: enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And he makes a critical distinction about enjoyment specifically. It's not the same as pleasure. Pleasure is private, momentary, and fades. Enjoyment is what happens when a pleasure is shared, when it becomes a memory, a moment held in common with others. We say a problem shared is a problem halved. Perhaps its opposite is equally true. A joy shared is a joy doubled. This is why friendship is not a luxury for the spiritual life, it is infrastructure. Now, Screwtape's second strategy: make the patient forget that life moves in rhythms. We already talked about the law of undulation yesterday, and there's no need to repeat it here. It's enough for us to consider that the patient in these letters is standing at a crossroads. The trough is not his enemy. Left to itself, it could deepen and mature him. The enemy is the set of lies Screwtape is quietly whispering around it, that the emptiness is permanent, that pleasure will fill it, that the whole thing was always just a phase, and that he'd better face it alone. And Lewis, with characteristic brilliance, exposes every one of those lies, not by arguing against them, but by letting Screwtape say them out loud, in his own voice, in his own words. So, what does all of this mean for us, practically, in this season of Lent? 2 simple resolutions. The first, go find an experienced Christian and talk to them. Not online, in person if you can. Someone who has been following Christ for years or decades, who has been through dryness before and remained faithful. This is the gist of what the Church calls spiritual direction. Find yourself a spiritual director, whether a layperson or a priest, especially a priest when it touches on matters of your conscience, and ask them, honestly, how do you pray when prayer feels like nothing? How do you keep going when God seems silent? Their answer will almost certainly be one of the most useful things you hear this Lent. Don't let Screwtape keep you isolated. The company of experienced believers is not just spiritually enriching, it is apparently very inconvenient for hell. The second, replace one private, empty pleasure with a shared, meaningful one. This is the spirit of genuine Lenten sacrifice, not just subtracting something, but redirecting. Instead of scrolling alone, call someone. Instead of eating in front of a screen, sit at a table with another person. Share something. Laugh at something together. Remember that joy, as St. Francis de Sales tells us, prepares the heart for grace. And if a joy shared is really a joy doubled, then the simplest act of human companionship might be doing more spiritual work than you realize. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.